Hello, my friend. Let me begin with a quiet question, gentle but deeply honest. Have you ever felt lonely, even while sitting right next to the person you once loved the most? Not the kind of loneliness that comes from abandonment. Not because they treated you badly. They're still there. They still ask if you've eaten, if you slept well. They still show up, playing the roles of partner, spouse, or companion exactly as they should. And yet, something inside you feels like it's drying up, quietly, like a small flame slowly running out of oil, like a smile that remains on your face, but not in your heart. A Buddhist practitioner once shared this with me. Venerable, I don't understand why. Every time I'm with the person I love, the person I've shared so many years with, I feel lonelier than ever. It's like I'm sitting beside a stranger. They're right there asking what I want to eat, where I want to go. But inside, everything feels hollow. I looked at her gently and said, "It's because you're being looked at, but not truly seen." In the teachings of the Buddha, loneliness doesn't come from the lack of people around you. It comes from not being touched emotionally, spiritually, or soulfully. You can be at a crowded party. You can be lying next to someone you once called your soulmate and still feel like just a shadow, dim, silent, slowly fading away from your own sense of self. That is the deepest kind of loneliness. Sometimes we stay in relationships not because of love, but because of fear. Fear of emptiness. Fear of sleeping in a cold, quiet room. Fear of being judged by others as a failure. So we stay, even if staying means slowly breaking ourselves down, one day at a time. But have you ever noticed? On some days, when you're alone, you actually feel more alive. You laugh louder. You breathe easier. You don't have to force yourself to become someone you're not. And then, when they return, you shrink. You go quiet again. Not because you're angry, but because deep down, you no longer feel like yourself when you're with them. There's a saying in the East, if two rivers flow in opposite directions, it's not a shared destiny. And the Buddha said, even sitting side by side, if the hearts don't harmonize, it is still a distance. The pain of feeling alone next to someone is far more exhausting than the pain of being alone by yourself. Because when you're truly alone, you at least have the chance to return to yourself. But when you're with someone who doesn't understand you, you start losing yourself in order to hold on to something that was already gone. I've met many people who say they're in peaceful marriages. No major problems. Financially secure. Not a lot of fighting. But when I ask, when was the last time you felt truly listened to? They go quiet. Not because they forgot, but because there was nothing worth remembering. Loneliness doesn't mean there's no one there. It means the person who's there isn't really present with you. And perhaps even more painful is when they are present, but you're no longer present with yourself. You've grown so tired, you don't even dare to speak your truth anymore. You silence your inner voice just to keep things peaceful. You live like a pressed leaf flattened inside a book, looking whole on the outside, but dry and lifeless on the inside. There's a Zen saying, if you feel lost, even when sitting next to someone, that is not the way. Because the way, the Dharma, is the path that brings you back to yourself, not the path that takes you farther away. You deserve love, but not just any love, the kind of love that awakens you, not wears you down. You deserve companionship, but the kind where even silence between you feels warm. Not the kind that leaves you wondering, do I still exist in their heart at all? So if today you find yourself in a relationship where every moment with them drains you, drains your joy, your trust, your spirit, then you're not wrong to ask, is this still a sacred connection or just a habit? I'm not telling you to leave. I'm inviting you to be honest, because you do not deserve to feel alone, especially when you've been giving the best parts of your heart. We cannot force someone to truly see us, but we can choose not to keep living in a space that leaves us invisible. And if you need a final reminder today, let me offer this. You were not born to be a shadow in your own story. You were born to shine and to be seen. I know, letting go is not easy, especially when you've once loved deeply, hoped endlessly, and told yourself, if I just try a little harder, maybe things will change. But then one day, without drama, without exhaustion, and without anyone doing anything terrible, you simply feel peace at the thought of walking away. And I want to make this clear. That isn't coldness. That's clarity. It's the moment your heart stops fighting, stops begging, stops bargaining with itself to hold on to something that no longer feels like you. I once met a woman in her 42nd. She waited until everyone else had left after a Dharma talk, then slowly came up to me, eyes filled with hesitation. She said, "Venerable, I don't know why, but lately, every time I think about divorce, I feel lighter, and then I feel guilty. Am I being heartless?" I paused for a moment and gently asked her, "Is it possible that you're not really thinking about separating, but simply touching a truth you've been avoiding?" The Buddha taught, only when the mind stops clinging does suffering cease. Not every ending is a tragedy. Some partings don't involve screaming, tears, or blame. Sometimes there's just a quiet exhale, like setting down a heavy bag of stones you've carried for years. No one asked you to carry it. No one said you couldn't let it go, but you held it anyway. Sometimes we think we still love, but we're only clinging to a beautiful memory of what once was. We hold on to the first chapter, hoping that if we try hard enough, maybe the ending will mirror the beginning. But the truth is, love isn't meant to drain you to your last drop. True love lives where you can be fully present, where you can be yourself and not be afraid. That peace you feel when you imagine letting go, that's not the end of love. That's the end of illusion. You're not losing someone. You're finding yourself. I understand. You might feel cruel for walking away. You made vows. You stayed long enough to hope, to forgive, to mend. But ask yourself gently, are you still staying out of love? Or is it fear, dressed as obligation? The love you give others, it's precious. But if keeping that love means trading away the peace in your heart, maybe it's time to come home. In Zen, there's a beautiful teaching. There is no such thing as letting go. There is only seeing clearly, and what no longer belongs will fall away by itself. It's true. When your heart is clear and still, you begin to see what's really causing your suffering. And when you truly see it, you don't have to force yourself to let go. The heart lets go on its own. I've seen so many people hold on, endure, suffer silently, not because they're still in love, but because they're afraid to let go, afraid of the silence that follows, afraid of the loneliness. But here's the strange thing. Once they cross that threshold, they don't meet emptiness. They meet space. They meet breath. They return to a place where they don't have to smile out of politeness, don't have to pretend to be strong, don't have to shrink themselves just to fit into a relationship that no longer allows them to grow. Have you ever wondered that peace may not be something someone gives you? Maybe peace is what arises when you stop expecting them to understand, to change, to to respond. When you finally pause and ask, why am I staying somewhere that no longer lets me be myself? And if just thinking about leaving brings lightness to your chest, if you breathe deeper, if your heartbeat feels clearer, then maybe you're not running away. Maybe you're returning. Not returning to them. Returning to yourself. I'm not here to tell you to leave anyone. I'm simply inviting you to listen deeply to the voice inside that has waited far too long to be heard. Sometimes you don't need someone to hold your hand forever. Sometimes you just need one person or one moment that gives you permission to come home to the peace you lost inside yourself. And if that person is you, then my friend, you have never been alone. I want to invite you to pause, truly pause, not to do something grand or dramatic, but simply to take a deep breath and ask yourself a question you may have been avoiding for a long time. Am I still walking this path together, or am I just trying to survive it alone? Over the years, I've sat with many people, men and women in midlife, people who've spent decades building relationships, marriages, and families. And at some point, they sit in front of me, eyes tired, voice quiet, and say, "Venerable, I feel like I'm the only one still trying. The other person, they've stopped showing up. They don't care anymore. But I stay because I don't want to fail. Because I don't want my children to grow up in a broken home. Because I'm scared of being alone." I listen. Then gently I say, "You can't water a dead tree by pouring into its roots forever." In the Buddhist teachings, compassion doesn't mean hurting yourself to keep someone else close. True compassion always begins with yourself. If every day you have to shrink yourself just to fit into a relationship where the other person no longer shows up, you're on a path where only one person is walking. And when there's only one person walking, it's no longer a relationship. It's a journey of one. And that, my friend, is not what love is meant to be. The Buddha taught, when one side no longer creates good karma, the bond will fall away like a leaf from a branch, not because of the wind, but because the time has come. Real love is a shared walk. It's two people growing, learning, and showing up for each other. But if you're the only one planting seeds, while the other stands by, or worse, turns away, you must ask yourself with clarity and courage, am I loving or am I just holding on? Because those two may look similar from the outside, but inside, they are worlds apart. I remember a man in his 62nd who once came to the monastery. He had been the provider, the protector, a kind and honorable man. But his marriage had grown cold for over 20 years. His wife didn't argue anymore, but she also didn't connect. Each day was a cycle of silence. Dinner, sleep, no eye contact, no questions, no warmth. When I asked, "Why are you still there?" he gave a sad smile and replied, "Because, Venerable, walking away now would feel like a boat turning back after sailing a full circle. But the truth is, maybe I've been rowing alone this whole time." And I could only say, if you're the only one rowing, then it's no longer a boat. It's a burden. Dear friend, you were not born to be the one holding a relationship together on your own. You weren't born to be the gatekeeper of an empty house. You deserve a love that responds, a presence that meets you, a hand that doesn't just hold you, but holds you with a heart. I know there are days you whisper to yourself, if I can just hold on a little longer. But if you have to say that every single day, and nothing ever changes, then it's time to ask, am I nurturing this, or am I simply enduring it? In Zen, we're taught something deeply moving. Sometimes letting go doesn't mean you stopped loving. It just means you can't keep loving in a way that's destroying you. You don't have to raise your voice to prove your worth. You don't have to argue to demand fairness. You just need to see clearly. And when you do, when you see that you're walking alone, loving alone, preserving alone, letting go is no longer a failure. It becomes an act of wisdom, an act of compassion for yourself. The Buddha taught, the right path is not about clinging to what's already gone, but knowing when to stop so you don't cause more suffering for either side. So if you find yourself in a relationship where you're the only one holding on, the only one trying, the only one sacrificing, you don't need to prove anything anymore. Because peace doesn't come from holding someone back. Peace comes when you stop forcing yourself to carry it all alone. Have you ever sat next to someone you love? A partner, a dear friend, or even a family member, and suddenly realized the silence between you no longer feels warm? It's no longer that gentle, peaceful, quiet, like two candles glowing side by side in the night. Instead, it feels heavy, like a fog sitting right in your chest. No words are spoken, but somehow you feel tired, uneasy, as if you're sitting alone in a room full of people. I call that cold silence. And if you've ever experienced it, you know exactly what I mean. In Zen, we hold silence in high regard, because in silence, the mind returns home. In silence, two people can meet each other more truthfully than through any spoken word. You don't have to explain everything. You don't have to hold hands tightly. Sometimes, just sitting side by side, breathing together, is enough to feel we are truly present for each other. But not all silence is presence. There's a kind of silence where you feel abandoned. There's a kind of silence where you feel yourself slowly disappearing in the eyes of the other. And there's a kind of silence where both people are quietly avoiding the very thing that needs to be said. If the silence between you no longer nourishes, but becomes a wall that is not mindfulness, that's a symptom of emotional distance. I once met an elderly couple who had been married for over 40 years. On the outside, everything seemed fine. No major arguments. They still had dinner together. Still asked, "Did you sleep well?" Still went to the temple during holidays. But when the wife sat alone with me, she said something that struck me to the core. "Venerable, it's been 12 years since we truly talked. We exchange information, that's all. Like roommates. And I've stopped saying much because even if I speak, no one's really listening." I asked her, "And how do you feel in that silence?" Her eyes welled with tears, and she whispered, "I feel like I'm living in a hollow space, one that never echoes back." Do you know that feeling? When your heart still longs to connect, still wants to be seen, heard, understood, but the only thing between you and the other person is a silence that neither of you dares to walk into. Silence without presence becomes hidden distance. Silence without mindfulness becomes emotional coldness, the kind that chills the heart even when the bodies are side by side. The Buddha once said, "Being near someone doesn't mean you love them. True love is when you are fully present with your whole heart. You don't need someone to talk endlessly. You just need them to be there in stillness, with eyes that understand, with breath that resonates with yours, with a heart that's still open toward you. But if the silence makes you anxious, if it makes you doubt yourself, if it causes you to shrink so you don't disturb them, then that's no longer a space of love. It becomes a locked room with no echo. You might be in a relationship like that now, where you no longer dare to speak your truth, where you've gotten used to quietly enduring, where every interaction makes you feel smaller, like there's nothing left to say and nowhere left to go. So let me tell you this, From someone who has sat with countless couples, seen many relationships evolve and dissolve. When silence becomes heavier than healing, that's when you must pause and turn inward. Not to judge the other, but to ask yourself, am I silent because I feel peace? Or because I'm afraid? Am I silent because we understand each other? Or because I no longer believe I'll be heard? I'm not telling you to walk away. I'm simply inviting you to listen to your heart. What is it saying to you through this silence? If it's trembling, if it's sad, if it feels invisible, please don't keep hiding in silence. Find a healthy way to reconnect. Or, if you must, allow yourself to walk away from the place that no longer hears your soul. The Buddha said, peace doesn't come from the absence of sound. Peace is when amid all that is left unsaid, you still feel understood. So if you are in a relationship where silence brings unease instead of comfort, maybe you don't need to speak more. Maybe you just need to see more clearly. And sometimes, what needs to be spoken isn't a word, but the quiet courage to leave a space that no longer nourishes your heart. I want to invite you to pause for just a moment. Imagine we're sitting together, quietly sharing a cup of tea. No rush, no need to pretend we're strong. Just a gentle space to breathe and look inward. And to ask yourself a question you may have been avoiding for a long time. Why is it that when they're around, my heart feels more unsettled instead of more at peace? Have you ever felt that way? They walk into the room, and instead of feeling safe, loved, or grounded, you feel anxious, off balance, sometimes even lost. You're no longer sure of what you think. You can't trust what you feel. Every word, every look, every little reaction from them makes you question yourself more and more. I once sat with a middle-aged Buddhist woman, a kind soul, so gentle she didn't even realize she was emotionally exhausted. She told me, "Venerable, I don't understand. I still love this person, but every time we're together, I feel scrambled inside, like I'm no longer myself. I stay quiet. I give in. I'm afraid of being a burden. I used to be joyful, clear, but now I feel like I'm fading." I looked at her and gently asked, "Is it possible that their presence isn't making you stronger, but is activating wounds inside you?" The Buddha taught, when conditions are right, the heart is at peace. When karma arises, the heart is disturbed. Not everyone comes into our lives to lift us up. Some come as mirrors, reflecting what still needs healing within us. They don't necessarily mean harm, but the karma between you may be surfacing through tension, anxiety, and growing self-doubt. Let me offer you a little image to reflect on. Imagine walking on a mountain path. If you're with someone truly aligned with you, the walk feels lighter. Even when the road gets steep, you feel supported because they walk beside you, without judgment, without control. But if being with them leaves you unsure, whether to turn left or right, to speak or stay silent, to keep going or stop, is that really companionship? Someone who is right for you will make your heart feel brighter, not dimmer. They don't need to teach you grand lessons. Their simple presence allows you to feel like yourself. They don't make you feel perfect. They help you feel enough, even in your imperfections. In a Dharma talk, I once told the community, you can love someone deeply, but that doesn't mean they help you grow. True love doesn't make you lose your direction. It doesn't make you feel small. When love is in the right time, with the right awareness, It strengthens your footing in this world. It doesn't leave you more uncertain. So if you notice that their presence brings conflict to your heart, that's not something to suppress or to push through. That's your heart quietly whispering, this might not be the right path anymore. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. It doesn't mean you're weak. It just means you may no longer be vibrating on the same frequency of awareness. And what you need is not to reshape yourself to fit, but to listen and have the courage to choose a different direction if needed. The Buddha never asked us to hold on to what makes us anxious. He taught us to recognize and let go of what no longer brings clarity to the mind. Because the heart, your heart, is the very center of spiritual practice. And if something is making your heart dimmer by the day, it's probably not a good karmic bond. It might be karma asking you to wake up. So let me ask you this. If you closed your eyes right now and imagined life without this person in it, would your chest feel heavier or lighter? If it feels lighter, perhaps you already know the answer. Dear friend, if what I've shared today touches something in you, if you've ever felt yourself pulled off center, in the presence of someone who should have been your peace, then I invite you, listen to yourself. Don't ignore the subtle messages of your own heart, because your heart often knows the truth, long before your mind is ready to admit it. And if you'd like to keep walking this path with me, the path of awareness, wisdom, and compassion, I invite you to subscribe to Buddhism Seeds below. Like this video if it offered you clarity. Share it with someone who may need to hear this. And leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever felt lost in the presence of someone you loved? I read every comment, the same way I listen to every soul finding its way home. Have you ever sat beside someone, a partner, a family member, maybe even the person you once believed was your other half, and suddenly felt completely empty? They haven't gone anywhere. They're still right there beside you. They're not doing anything wrong. They still ask how your day was. They still play their part. They're present, at least physically, but something feels strange. You feel abandoned, even though no one is left. I want you to really listen to what I'm about to say, because maybe, just maybe, this will finally give a name to the quiet sadness you've been carrying for so long. In Buddhist teaching, there's a concept called active ignorance. It means not just not knowing, but being unknowingly unaware in the middle of daily life. It's like sleepwalking through connection, through routine, through relationships. A person can be so close to you and still not truly see you. They see your body, they hear your voice, but they don't touch the core of your being. And slowly, you begin to feel like a shadow, present, but unseen, existing, but not felt. I once spoke with a woman in her 52nd after a Dharma talk. She told me, "Venerable, I've been married for nearly 30 years. From the outside, people say, I'm lucky. My husband doesn't drink. He's not abusive. He goes to work, takes care of the house. But deep inside, I feel invisible. I talk to him, he nods, but his eyes wander. I cry, he wipes my tears. But I know he does it out of duty, not out of pain shared." I was silent, because that is a very specific kind of loneliness. Not the kind that comes from being alone, but the kind that comes from being with someone and still feeling unseen. The Buddha once said, "One who is present in body, but absent in heart, is like a lamp that does not shine." True presence isn't just being in the same room. It's not just shared dinners or polite check-ins. It's being there fully, mindfully, with your awareness, your compassion, your ability to listen and truly feel. In one of our tea meditation sessions, I once told a group of practitioners, when you drink tea with someone, what matters isn't how good the tea is. What matters is, are they really drinking it with you? Or is their body here while their mind is somewhere else? So let me ask you, are you in a relationship where the other person still stays, but no longer sees you? You speak and they hear. But do you feel their heart listening through their eyes? You cry and they wipe your tears. But do you feel embraced by their understanding? Or have you become just another item on their daily checklist? A familiar name, a familiar face sharing the same house, but no longer a soul they're truly in touch with? Take a moment. Place your hand over your heart. Can you feel the absence, even though no one has walked away? If so, you are not wrong. You're simply waking up from a very common illusion, attachment without aliveness. In Zen, we don't call that love. We call it familiarity without awareness. It's when people stay because of habit or convenience or shared history, but the deeper connection is no longer alive. And yes, the other person might still say, "I'm here for you," but to you, it feels like you're alone in the relationship. And sometimes, that hurts more than if they had actually left. I know you don't want to break things. You still hope. You still believe. If I just try a little harder, if I'm patient, kind, and understanding enough, maybe they'll start to see me again, like they did in the beginning. But dear friend, real love doesn't grow from silent suffering. It grows from mutual presence, where both people are seen and are able to see each other. The Buddhist said, "One who listens deeply is watering the soul of another." And if you're living with someone who no longer waters your soul, you don't need to keep withering just to preserve the illusion of presence. Because being physically present without emotional presence is like staying in a house that no longer has warmth. And you, my friend, deserve warmth. I want to begin with a simple question, but it might hit you harder than you expect. Why do we feel like we have to work so hard just to be loved? Have you ever felt that way? You love someone, and slowly, day by day, you find yourself trying harder, pushing more, sacrificing endlessly, just to keep the last bit of warmth alive in the relationship. You cook their favorite meals. You try to understand them more. You suppress your real feelings just to avoid conflict. And every time you do, you hope, just a little, that maybe they'll finally see you. Maybe they'll love you back a little more. Maybe they'll meet you halfway. But instead, all you feel is growing exhaustion. And deep inside, there's a quiet voice, soft but honest. I'm becoming a stranger inside my own heart. I remember an older Buddhist woman once shared with me, "Teacher, I feel like I'm playing a game of chess, but I'm the only one moving the pieces. I'm tired, but if I stop trying, the whole relationship will collapse. And I don't want to be the one who lets go first." I gave her a gentle smile and asked, "But if you keep trying while losing your inner peace, then what exactly are you holding on to? Is it love or the fear of being left behind?" Dear friend, in Buddhist teaching, true love is not a desperate effort to cling to what's slipping away. True love, as the Buddha teaches, is liberating, not binding. It opens your heart. It doesn't make it shrink. It allows you to be fully yourself, not a polished version of you crafted just to earn someone's approval. You can love deeply with your whole heart. But if that love constantly requires you to prove you're worthy, then maybe it's time to pause and ask yourself, is this still love, or has it turned into a silent transaction? The Buddhist said, love, when true, does not carry suffering. A love that makes you anxious every time you express it. A love that makes you afraid during silence. A love that makes you feel guilty for simply being yourself. That's no longer love. That's an unspoken contract. One person giving, the other expecting. I once sat with a man in his 62nd, a father who had spent his whole life giving. He worked hard, provided for his family, was kind to his wife, patient with his kids. But when we sat down together, he said something I've never forgotten. I feel like if one day I stopped trying so hard, no one would really need me. I'm only loved when I'm in the role of the one who serves. I looked him in the eye and said slowly, then maybe they don't love you. They love what you do for them. You see, effort that comes from love feels light, but effort that comes from fear makes you feel like a prisoner of your own emotions. You don't dare rest because you fear being unwanted. You don't speak your truth because you fear making them upset. You don't live in your own essence because you believe you're only lovable if you cause no trouble. And that is a quiet form of suffering. Now, I'm not saying love doesn't take effort. It absolutely does. But caring is different from struggling to survive. Giving is different from losing yourself. If every action you take is laced with fear, fear of being judged, of not being enough, of not being chosen, then you're not loving. You're emotionally dependent. The Buddha never said we need to be perfect to be loved. He taught, one who truly loves themselves knows how to love others in a balanced way. So if you're in a relationship where your constant effort has become a burden, maybe it's time to pause. Not to walk away, but to come home to yourself. You don't have to keep trying so hard to be loved. You only have to remember this. You've always been worthy of love, without having to trade yourself away to receive it. There are moments in the middle of all the advice from others, amid the constant noise of life, when a very small, very quiet voice rises from deep within you. No one else can hear it. Only you can. And even if you try to ignore it, dismiss it, reason your way around it, it keeps returning. It doesn't shout. It doesn't judge. It doesn't scare you. It just whispers. You're not being true to yourself. I've met many people older, wise, calm on the outside. But when they sat across from me, their eyes softened and drifted. And they said, "Teacher, I've known for a long time. I know this relationship isn't right anymore. I know this job doesn't align with me. I know this path doesn't bring me happiness. But I still can't let go. I'm scared. So I just keep telling myself to try a little harder." I didn't respond right away because I understood. They didn't need someone to tell them what to do. What they truly needed was the courage to trust their inner voice. In Buddhism, we call this your Buddha nature, the innate wisdom that already lives within each of us. You don't have to memorize scriptures. You don't have to read 100 books. If you can return to stillness, even for a moment, you'll begin to sense what is right for you. But life pulls us away. Fear clouds our clarity. And the expectations of others teach us to ignore that sacred inner voice. Have you ever felt that way? Like you've been living slightly out of alignment, just a little off center every day. Like you keep nodding yes to things that your heart quietly says no to. Like you're sitting in a dark room and the only light comes from within. but you keep opening the window, hoping someone out there will shine a light for you. The Buddha said, "No one can save you but yourself. No one can show you the way except the light within your own mind." Intuition is not some vague feeling. It's the quiet accumulation of everything you've felt, lived, and understood, but perhaps haven't yet dared to honor. It's a wise teacher inside you, with no title, no credentials, but a clarity that can't be faked. I've sat in meditation on many quiet nights, when the world was silent and all tasks were done. And strangely, it was in those moments that my mind became the clearest, not through thinking, but through a deep, wordless knowing, this is right. And sometimes, I'm in the wrong place. I know you've had moments like that too. Moments when you were about to say yes, but your heart held back. Moments when you were ready to enter a new relationship, but something inside whispered, "Not yet." Moments when you tried to forgive again, to endure again, but something quietly resisted. That is wisdom rising, not in words, but in feeling. And if you keep silencing it, you'll find yourself more and more drained, even if everything looks fine on the surface. Someone once said to me, "Teacher, why can't I hear my intuition like other people?" And I replied, "It's not that you haven't heard it. You've heard it many times. You just haven't trusted it enough to follow it. You see, this world is filled with voices from the outside, but the one you truly need to hear is the one inside. And if you have the courage to trust it, you won't avoid difficulty, but you will avoid regret, because at the very least, you'll be living in alignment with your truth." The Buddha never asked us to be perfect. He only asked us to be honest with our hearts, because when you return to your authentic self, even if the path is hard, you will still have light to walk by. So if today you're standing at a crossroads, if your life feels uncertain, if you've heard that small voice whispering, but you haven't yet had the courage to follow it, let me tell you this: that voice is not an illusion. It is the deepest, clearest, most trustworthy part of who you are. Listen to it, and then live as if you believe that you already know the way. There's something I believe none of us should ignore. It's the feeling of losing trust in yourself while being in a relationship. Have you ever experienced that? Being with someone, your partner, a family member, or even a close friend, but instead of growing, you slowly begin to shrink. You shrink in the way you stop speaking your truth. You shrink in how you begin doubting your own feelings. And you shrink in the quiet belief that somehow you are not enough, even though you've done nothing wrong. I once met a woman in her 62nd. She came to the temple after her husband passed away. In a quiet conversation, she said to me, "Teacher, my husband never hit me. He never left me. But for 40 years of marriage, I found myself more and more afraid to speak, afraid to make mistakes. He'd say I was overthinking, too sensitive, too emotional. So little by little, I stopped talking. I stopped asking for things. I stopped feeling like I had the right to feel anything at all. And now that he's gone, I realize I haven't truly been myself for a very long time." I looked at her gently and said, "Some wounds never scream, but they stay with us for a lifetime." A healthy relationship is not a place where you constantly have to prove you're good enough. It's a place where you can grow, where you're seen with respect, where you can feel without shame, and where you can make mistakes and still be loved. In the Buddha's teachings, there's a line that carries deep truth. The wise do not poison themselves just to hold on to a temporary feeling. What does that mean? It means you don't have to dim your inner light. You don't have to hurt your own heart just to maintain a relationship that is draining the very life out of you. Even if you call it love, duty, or marriage, if being around someone constantly makes you feel smaller, not stronger, you're not nurturing a bond. You're sacrificing your spirit. And I know it's hard to admit that someone we love might be affecting us negatively. So we often blame ourselves instead. Maybe I'm just not good enough. But, dear one, when self-blame is left unchecked, it turns into self-doubt, and eventually into self-erasure. Someone once asked me, "How do I know if a relationship is wrong for me?" And I answered with another question. When you're in that relationship, do you feel yourself shining brighter or fading away? The person who deserves to walk beside you is not the one who's always right, but the one who helps you trust yourself more, understand yourself better, and feel whole, even in your imperfect moments. There's a line in the Anguttara Nikaya where the Buddha says, "Good friendship is the whole of the spiritual path." And I've come to understand that deeply, because a right relationship is Dharma. It's a path of growth, not decline, a space that expands compassion for others and for yourself. If someone, intentionally or not, is slowly causing you to lose faith in your intuition, in your voice, in your worth, then maybe, just maybe, you need to pause, not necessarily to walk away, but to wake up, to ask yourself, am I still living true to myself? Or am I simply existing according to someone else's expectations? So much so that I barely recognize who I am anymore? You don't have to be extraordinary to deserve love. You only need to be yourself, fully, peacefully. And if any relationship is taking that away from you, then you not only have the right, you have the responsibility to protect what's most sacred in you. Your self-respect, the light of your own self-trust. Because without that light, even if someone stays beside you, you'll still feel lost. The Buddha never taught us to love at any cost. He taught that true love must walk hand in hand with wisdom, or else it will not liberate. And sometimes, the greatest act of love you can give is the love you give to yourself. I often hear this from people who come to the temple seeking peace. They say, "I don't know if I still love this person, or if I'm just staying because I think I have to." Have you ever asked yourself that question? Sometimes, your heart doesn't beat the same way it used to. You no longer feel longing or even anger. Not because you've reached enlightenment, but because something inside you has slowly gone numb. You're still there, but not out of true willingness. You stay because you're afraid of hurting the other person if you walk away. You stay for the children, for appearances, for fear of judgment. You stay because you believe, this is what I'm supposed to do. And over time, what once felt like love becomes something you carry, not something you come home to. I'm not saying this to judge you. I say it because I understand. Truly I do. Especially for those in their 42nd, 52nd, and beyond. Many have spent a lifetime living for others, out of duty, loyalty, and silent sacrifice. But my dear friend, there's a quiet truth that runs deep. Love, if it no longer comes from choice, is no longer love. It may look like commitment, but it's a habit wearing the mask of responsibility, stripped of soul. An elderly woman once told me at the temple, "Teacher, I'm not afraid to leave my husband because I still love him. I'm afraid because I think he'll fall apart if I do. But deep down, I know I'm slowly dying inside." I looked at her gently and asked, "You think you're saving him? But are you saving yourself?" The Buddha taught clearly, no one can save another if both are drowning. What does that mean? It means when a relationship no longer helps both people grow, when it no longer brings life or light to either soul, staying isn't compassion. It's a kind of clinging disguised as sacrifice. And if that sacrifice doesn't come from mindfulness, it becomes a silent burden. You don't complain, but you go quiet. You don't leave, but you also don't arrive. And the saddest part is, you're no longer living in that relationship with your heart. I've seen many couples in their 62nd, even 72nd, still walking side by side, sharing meals, sleeping in the same bed, but they haven't truly touched each other's lives in years. Everything has become a contract signed by habit and duty. Now, I don't dismiss the beauty of responsibility, but duty without presence, without warmth, is like a heavy coat on tired shoulders. The Buddha once said, "To remain in a place that no longer fits you is a form of suffering." You don't have to walk away in the physical sense, but you do need to be honest with yourself. Am I still here because I choose to be, or because I'm afraid not to be? If you're staying out of fear they might fall apart, ask yourself, am I truly helping them rise, or are we both standing still in the dark? And if you're afraid you'll be seen as the one at fault for leaving, please remember this. You are not wrong just because your heart has gone quiet. What's wrong is pretending forever. Some people think they're strong because they endure, but sometimes real strength is the courage to step out of a role you've played for far too long. Because love cannot be an obligation, and obligation without the nourishment of love becomes a beautiful but lonely struggle. I'm not saying this to push you toward a rash decision. I say it so you remember, you have the right to be honest with your own heart. You have the right to no longer hold on to what no longer lets you live. If love is still there, it will find a way to continue. But if only fear remains, then no one is truly being saved. There is a quiet but deeply powerful moment in many people's lives. The moment you realize you and the person you once shared everything with no longer truly see each other. It's not because of some big fight, not because someone did something wrong. It just slowly happened. You both became actors playing roles in each other's lives. Have you ever felt this? When conversations start to feel like exchanges between polite strangers, civil, appropriate, but missing life and missing truth. When questions like, "How was your day?" or "Did you eat yet?" sound more like lines from a script you've both memorized too well. An older Buddhist woman once shared this with me after a Dharma talk. "Teacher, my husband and I, we don't fight. No conflict, no drama. But I haven't felt truly seen by him in so long. We eat together, we sleep side by side, we talk every day. But it feels like we're just playing the roles of husband and wife, like co-workers managing a project called marriage." I heard her words and fell silent, because what she said is not unusual to me. I've seen it in the eyes of so many others. They were once soulmates, staying up all night talking about dreams, laughing so hard they cried over something silly, sitting in silence together. And that silence used to feel sacred. But life happened. Time passed. Responsibilities piled up. The children grew, and the weight of daily life wore them down. And bit by bit, they forgot how to look at each other with those first, tender eyes. They began replacing presence with obligation, replacing deep listening with quick replies, replacing love with roles. And the saddest part is not that they dislike each other, it's that they've become invisible to each other. The Buddha once said, "When the mind is no longer fresh, everything old or new loses its meaning. When applied to love, that means if you stop seeing someone through the heart, no matter how much they try, you won't be able to feel the life inside them. I once asked an old forest monk in Thailand, "How do you know when a relationship is alive or just surviving?" He smiled gently and replied, "Look at their eyes when they sit in silence. If the eyes are still warm, still soft, still reaching, then the relationship is still alive. But if their gaze drifts away, they've become two shadows sitting side by side." Living in a relationship where both people are just acting out roles, it's exhausting. You try to stay kind, try to fulfill your duties, keep up appearances, but inside you feel hollow. And eventually, you start to feel lonely within your own relationship. I'm not saying you should leave, but I do believe you should pause and ask yourself honestly, do I still truly see this person? And do they still see me as I am? Because love, when reduced to appearance only, is like a dried up flower. It still has a shape, still holds its form, but it has lost its fragrance. The Buddha taught, awareness is the ability to see things as they truly are, not as we wish them to be. And when you are awake, you begin to see. No one wants to live forever in a script, even if it was once a beautiful one. Every soul longs to be touched, to be seen, to be fully present in truth and in life. And if you find that it's been a long time since you've truly looked at your partner, or worse, since you've wanted to be seen, then it may be time to return. Not necessarily to leave, but to return to the truth inside you, to start asking the old questions. But with a new heart, do we still see each other? Or are we just seeing the roles we play? And if you have the courage to ask, then maybe real love can be invited back in. Not through tears, not through drama, but through a soft gaze and a simple nod that says, "I want to truly see you again." There's something strange, but very real, about how some relationships don't end with a loud argument. There are no harsh words, no tears, no dramatic breakdown. They just slowly fade, quietly, gently, like a season that changes without us even noticing. Have you ever felt that? One morning, you sit in front of your usual cup of coffee. You gaze out the window and imagine your future, the things you want to do, the place you want to live, the way you want to feel in your own life. And suddenly, you realize that person, the one who's been beside you, is no longer in that vision. Not because you're angry, not because they've done anything wrong, not even because you're trying to run away, but because your heart quietly stepped out of that relationship a long time ago. Your mind, your soul, moved ahead before any words were spoken. Now, when you think of us, all you see is an empty space. And you know what? That's not something to fear. Sometimes, that's a sign of awakening. In Buddhism, we learn, the mind leads, everything else follows. Which means when your heart is no longer connected to something, even if you stay physically, your spirit is no longer living there. I once met a 50-year-old Buddhist woman who had been married for 25 years. She told me her marriage looked fine on the outside. No betrayal, no major conflict. They still spoke kindly, still called each other dear out of habit. But then she said something I'll never forget. "I don't see him in my dreams about the future. Not because I hate him, but because I just don't see us continuing together. And I'm not angry. I just feel light." I looked at her and gently said, "Maybe you haven't lost him. Maybe You've simply graduated from a lesson he was meant to help you learn. Dear friend, not every ending is a tragedy. Not every goodbye is full of sorrow. Some people come into our lives simply to teach us something about love, about letting go, about who we are becoming. And once the lesson is complete, the heart will naturally begin to move on, like water finding a new direction. The Buddha taught, when the karma ends, you don't need to push, things will naturally fall away. When the karma remains, you don't need to hold on, things will stay. So when you begin to think of your future and they're no longer in it, it doesn't mean you're cold. It doesn't mean you're cruel. It might just mean you've outgrown an old version of yourself. And maybe the person who once walked with you simply doesn't belong in the next chapter. I'm not saying this to encourage you to let go too quickly. I'm saying this so you don't feel guilty when your heart begins to change. Because a heart that is nurtured in mindfulness does not betray. It transforms quietly. It moves from love to understanding, from understanding to gratitude, and from gratitude to freedom. A wise monk once told me, a relationship is truly over, not when you walk away from each other, but when you no longer search for each other in your mind. So if you've been living these days, not needing to be understood anymore, not needing them to change, not even needing to walk the path together like you once promised, then maybe you're not losing anyone. You're simply finding your way back to yourself. Not everyone is meant to continue with you. Some people are only written into the earlier chapters of your story, and that's okay. And if one morning you look toward the future and see something peaceful, calm, and light without them, then trust your heart. It's not wrong. It's simply choosing the right moment to take the next step. And if something I've said today touched a quiet part of you, if you see yourself reflected in these words, please know you are not alone. So many people at every age have gone through this same moment. That moment of realization, when the heart has moved on, even though the feet are still standing there. If you'd like a space to hear more reflections like this, on love, on letting go, and the path of returning to your true self, I invite you to subscribe to Buddhism Seeds below. Hit the bell so you don't miss any upcoming videos. And if this video brought you comfort or clarity, like, share, and leave a comment to let me know. Have you ever looked into your future and realized they weren't in it anymore? I'll read every single comment, as if I were sitting across from you, listening with a quiet heart. Thank you for being here.